All right. I told everybody we're going to wait until two past. It is now two past. So we're going to get going and people just keep coming in. So I just want to thank everybody who has joined this IGIS webinar. We're going to be focusing today on an interactive ransomware exercise. So this is really going to be 60 minutes of a very hopefully interactive session with all of you. Um, the chat is going to be your friend. We're going to be asking a lot of you questions as we go through this interactive exercise. We're also going to be throwing different polls at you so we can get a sense of who you are, kind of who is in the webinar today. And really, we want this to be engaging. We're going to be asking you questions with different scenarios, like what would you do in this scenario? And we just want to get a sense from everybody on kind of what that is. But just to kind of, again, set the stage before we move on to the next slide, this is a cybersecurity tabletop exercise, which is what we're going to do today. This is something that hopefully after today, you will start doing more regularly. Hopefully after today, you will feel more comfortable doing them. This does not have to be something that is, very difficult, very tough, very unapproachable. You don't need, all these different technologies to do this. This is like doing drills that you do in your agency or your organization. You do tests from time to time. You even test the fire alarms at home, hopefully twice a year with the batteries, right? This is something to just flex those muscles, get that muscle memory going with how to respond to a cybersecurity incident. All right, so that sets the stage. So let's move on to the next slide if we could. So this is just to meet the panel, and I think you actually might see your first poll popping up soon here. And again, this is just for us to get a sense of who you are. But as we see kind of how the poll is going, we will just kind of start and go around the room, and I will start. My name is Larry Zorio. I am the CISO and CIO for Mark 43. I have been in the cybersecurity industry for, geez, at least 25 plus years. And on top of that, I am an IGIS board member. I am the treasurer for IGIS as well. And then I am the co-chair of IGIS's cybersecurity working group, which kind of everybody on the panel today is a member of that. But let's go to Stacy. Do you want to just give a quick intro for yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy. I am the Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence for right now a private company called CyberWaw. For those of you who know me, I've been doing cybersecurity in the government space, state, local, and federal space for about 25 years as well. Larry, I think that means we're old at this point. Yeah, we're just going to move past that. Anyway, I'm obviously part of IGIS too, and I am also on IACP's Cybercrime and Digital Evidence Committee, co-chair of their cybersecurity working group, and the National Sheriff's Association. So, as I like to say, I get around.
Yes. Yes, Stacy. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. Major Hook.
Afternoon. Thanks, Larry. I'm Major Brendan Hook with the Fairfax County Police Department. Until recently, I was the assistant commander of our Planning and Research Bureau, which included IT. Spent about 4 years there, but I recently transferred to our Cyber and Forensics Division, which includes kind of like all the science and technology that we use to solve crime. So digital forensics, crime scene section, some of our lab features, and our technical investigations unit. So I spent about 4 years dealing with the IT stuff, and now I'm kind of back into police work. And my first day back in the job, we had a murder within like 6 minutes of my first shift. So it was a return back to police work and kind of getting back into the swing of things. But happy to be here, and I am also the IGIS co-chair for cybersecurity working group.
And Sergeant Peterson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. I am a sergeant in Taunton, Massachusetts. I've been in law enforcement for about 22 years, and during my time, I've worked on a department as small as about 17, all the way up to my current department of 125, and became involved with cybersecurity, basically kind of just by being in the wrong place at the right time, if you will, and kind of learning on the job. And hope that can bring some good experience to the law enforcement practitioners there who found themselves in the same position as I am. I'm obviously a part of IGES and also IACP on the Criminal Justice Committee and LEIT Board.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant. All right, so let's quickly review the polls. All right, so hopefully everybody who has kind of participated in the poll can see the results here, but if not, I'll quickly read them off. A big majority of you are IT and cybersecurity staff, which is kind of what we expected. But it's great to see support staff. There's even a good majority of even private sector people here. There's some sworn officers and even a few command staff. So that is great from a size perspective. All right. All right. The majority of you are 100 plus sworn officers. So we're dealing with a bit larger size agencies. But that being said, it seems like there's a good spread of even smaller agencies as well. Okay, awesome. All right, let's move on to the next slide if we could. And I think there'll even be another poll here. So just quickly go over the agenda. So this is how a tabletop exercise typically runs. And this is exactly what we're going to do for all of you. Usually you start with a scenario. It could be anything you want. It could be a ransomware attack. It could be a phishing attack. It could be that maybe even just the server room floods, right? That's kind of the first step of it is creating the scenario. Then we have something called injects, and these are just curveballs that get thrown at you during the exercise. So you can see we have a couple different curveballs that we're going to be throwing at each other. The first one is there is some sort of ransomware. There is some kind of increased pressure going on in the agency or your organization. Then we kind of get to recovery and how we're going to recover from an event. And we're going to kind of talk through all this. And then we're going to end with how to implement a TTX. We're going to talk about it as we move through it, but certainly at the end, we're going to kind of round things up. And I do stress that you should stay to the end, because at the end, the last couple slides, we have some free tools that you can use to help prepare you for this. Free tools around maybe even how to check to see if you have ransomware in your organization. So there's a lot there. And then finally, there's even just some kind of next steps you should take as well. So please stay towards the end. And again, we want you using the polls. It looks like everybody's using them, and also the chat window as well. We're going to be monitoring that so we can kind of feed questions back to one another. All right, so we have, has your department ever participated in a TTX? Or so the majority are saying no, but close enough. I mean, it's almost split. A good portion of you have participated, which is wonderful, which is great. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And I think, John, you're taking this one.
There we go. Okay, so as we start off today, we realize that we do have a multitude of different size agencies. So keep in mind, everybody's viewpoint is important. Please put it in the chat, as Larry said, that every department is going to have different challenges, different solutions, different ways that they're going to get it implemented, and we can all learn from each other. Our hope is that you can take either your own experience or something you've learned from a neighboring agency and help bring it to all of us. So for today's scenario, we are in the wonderful fictional city of Gotham City, PD. We have found ourselves where we are now suddenly first thing in the morning learning that our RMS system is offline. CAD is slowing to a halt. We don't know why. Our public records request portal is offline, and our help desk account has been compromised. As we begin to look into this matter, information that we are learning is that previously another municipal department, in this case the school department, we've identified that in our spam folders we've found emails that appear suspicious, that anybody who usually interacts with that other organization now has sight on them and says that this doesn't look like something I would normally have, and leading us to believe that potentially there is another municipal organization that has also been impacted and may be the spillover or cause of what we're dealing with. We're ready. So with this, our initial considerations are going to be who we are contacting within our agency. Are you the chief executive? Are you calling your IT? Are you IT? Are you calling commander or the chief? Do you have to get a hold of town hall, city hall, county resources? There's a lot of moving parts here, and we find that there's often a lot of worry about saying too much too soon. Within our agencies, we have to understand who decides what can happen, how it can happen, when it happens. Also, if we obviously still connected to the internet, we have to start making decisions. Are we going to remain connected? Are we going to disconnect for us? So we have started our exercise with those facts. Here, we are now learning from our IT department that we have ransomware in multiple systems within the department. Our email and phone systems are down. And you can see our immediate considerations are learning how widespread is the attack, what critical systems within our organization are impacted. If not all are impacted, do we have ones that we can function, or if not, what has come offline and how do we replicate or basically roll back to still function as expected?
John, I do want to call out one thing on the previous slide, just the poll. I should have called it out for you. Was the majority of people in the poll said that they had experienced a cyber attack recently. So I think
Okay.
it was up. I think it was the majority. So let's call it at least 50%. So we have that piece, and then if we go to kind of the polling here. Is there anything, are you able to see the poll, or I can talk through it if you don't have
Yep,
it?
I can see it now over here.
Okay.
So according to our poll, right now what we're seeing is that your greatest worry is the exposure of sensitive data, both PII and evidence within your department, and then followed closely by losing access to critical systems such as CAT RMS. Obviously, each attack or incident that we deal with is going to be slightly different on how we do this, and some of it we are not going to know until later what was actually compromised or how much we've lost. What I would suggest at this point in the exercise, we are first, as law enforcement practitioners, going to be focused on making sure that we maintain our operational ability, that we can still answer our 911 calls, that we can still get officers to where they need to go, and we can capture what we are doing and any evidence or anything else that happens there. So that needs to be happening simultaneous to our IT experts and cybersecurity experts starting to determine what information we have in fact lost.
John, one thing that I'd like to even call out too that you mentioned is identifying your critical systems. You made that. It was a really good point. I think at this point in time, that is something that you need to do, because you're not going to be able to work on every little thing. So you got to prioritize. I almost kind of want to do like a small little poll here, just in the chat window, like for those on the webinar who do maybe prioritize systems. Does anybody have any suggestions on how to prioritize systems? If any of you are maybe strong in that area, I'd be very curious on what you might do. For me, I would say, a big one is its impact, right? What is the impact if a system were to go down? It's those kind of systems that have crown jewels data in it. It's the systems like, for instance, your CAD system, your 911 system, the ones that you just can't afford to go down. That would be a way of prioritizing. I don't know if anybody wants to share anything in the chat here. Oh, it looks like somebody, here's even a guide from CIAS on how to prioritize these systems. Awesome. Excellent. I appreciate everybody getting involved here. Have you done a business impact assessment? Yeah, certainly. That's a big one. That's going to be important. Yeah, all right, CISA. All right, good. All right, yeah, CISA, SCADA systems. Yep. Awesome. Great. John, anything that you wanted to point out on the chat? I don't even know if you can see the chat, but again, I
Yeah,
appreciate.
I'm seeing it pop up. I
Yeah.
think the important thing is, and we appreciate all these feedback and ideas, is to realize that each of our organizations is going to have similar, but still some slightly different things that may impact based on our responsibilities or how big our municipality is. And at this point, it's also important to start determining what is either an internal based system or hosted system or a cloud based system, and what levels of access would still be had once we start making situations to shut things down, and what would need to be shut down in order to ensure further integrity if something hasn't been hit. And
Great.
remember that one.
Thanks, John. Okay. We ready to move on? Stacy and Brandon, I don't know if you want to add anything or we can just move on. All right, we're moving on. All right, so the next inject is we actually got a demand. We got a demand from a threat actor group, let's call it, but a ransom note has appeared. They're requesting a Bitcoin payment and it's to be done in 72 hours. They are claiming that all of our sensitive records, including PII, EPHI, kind of all of our sensitive, they have it all. They have our evidence, and it will be leaked in 72 hours. So what are we gonna do, right? What are we gonna do here? Some considerations to certainly think about when it comes to this. The first consideration is the poll that's on the screen. Like, do you have a stance in your city or town around ransomware, and whether you're a ransom, whether you're going to pay it? So
Right
majority
now,
are
Larry,
saying no.
I would say right now the feedback is that over 60% will not consider paying, and
Yeah.
about 40% have not considered it yet, which
Mm.
we've only so far one yes response.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, the one yes response. That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, it is something you have to consider. Like that would be a consideration, everybody. Like you got to have that conversation. You just got to have it. You got to have it with people in your city and town just to understand, whether you're going to pay it and then whether even you have the funds to pay it. These are just things, right? But other considerations are certainly like, all right, this is getting real now. You have a ransomware note. They're demanding money. How are you going to think about communicating this to your officers or even staff? Like that is something you need to think about. I would say in these scenarios, it probably makes sense just to have a template email or a template document that you can send out on how you're going to communicate. It's also going to be important for you to understand like where the ransomware originated from. Like think about that. Like was it from the PD? Was it from a public safety network or was it somewhere else in the city? Who know? It could have been, I don't know, the town hall, or it could have been one of the public schools in the city where this came from, and somehow it got into your environment. So you want to start thinking about that. Is there other malware or other problems that you need to address as well, right? Like, so yes, you have a problem with the ransom, but is there other malware? Are email accounts attacked or user accounts attacked? You want to start looking at, again, your user accounts, because typically when these things happen, an admin account has been compromised. So you definitely want to, those considerations. And I think digital evidence and trying to understand your sensitive data and kind of where it is and whatnot. So from an actions perspective, certainly you want to think about notifying, like I mentioned. Ensure that immediate safety of kind of vulnerable people. Like you have you have people who are undercover, you have like those types of vulnerable people who you want to make sure that their data or their data isn't exposed, and certainly their safety. You want to make sure that you're protecting those people, certainly. You want to call your cyber insurance policyholder. Hopefully you do have cyber insurance. Actually, I'm gonna ask that as I go through the rest of these. Like, do all of you have cyber insurance? I'd just be curious because some organizations don't. Some organizations self-insure. So I'd be curious if anyone wants to share in the chat whether you do have cyber insurance. That could be an interesting one. And then you want to determine the extent of the infection, certainly as well. All right. I don't see anything coming in the chat around that, but yeah, there's a few different variations. First, you have people who don't have insurance, but certainly self-insured, especially bigger cities who maybe can afford to self-insure could be another option. All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right, so I get to be the nasty bad guy here. I am going to point out that there are a couple of different reasons why you might consider paying, and this slide where we get into increased pressure is really where this starts to come true. You may choose to pay or not pay based on the simple fact that your systems are down, and paying may get them back up and running faster because the ransomware actors go away. Of course, that still leaves a vulnerability in your network, but at least they go away. It may be based on whether your data is protected or they could actually leak something. And in our scenario, we wanted to take this down a little bit deeper and say, yeah, we're going to make these guys really bad guys. They are going to choose to leak things, and they are purposely choosing to leak items that we have seen come out of police departments before when they were impacted by ransomware. So things like officers' PII, that has resulted in many officers being doxxed. So even if the data may be encrypted, would PII like home addresses be encrypted? That may not be, or it may be available in places where it's still accessible. Take a look at things like the other types of things they could do. So when we see ransomware attacks, consider, is everything backed up on the network the way it should be? We all know we store stuff locally on our desktop or our downloads folder just because, yeah, that's easy and simple. But if we're doing that with digital evidence or anything else, that may mean that the only way to get that information back is to pay for it because it never made it onto the backups in the first place. And then, of course, these actors, they want to get paid, and they know anytime they go after law enforcement, the focus really is on embarrassment. They know taking it to this next level stage of contacting others, contacting the media, citizens, if they can find a citizen activist who maybe doesn't like the police department. All of those groups are fair game for them to reach out and say, hey, guess what? We just got access to your police department. We have the data. And these are bad guys. They may be lying. You may have everything encrypted, but how much will the media or someone else believe you if you say it's all encrypted and the threat actors are the ones saying, well, no, it's not encrypted. They can pull information from elsewhere on the web that makes it look like you're lying. So there's kind of this game back and forth as to who can trick who into doing something. The other thing we've run into a lot is where they tip off the press and they tip off other folks and give them access to the download sites. I'm sure most of you know at this point that these ransomware groups have specific download sites you can go to on the dark web. So we'll see them actually pointing people towards the data itself to prove that the information is available and they really have access. One of the things about doing this is it makes it very hard for you to find and track those ransomware sites. So all the different groups are using different dark web sites. And one of the things that you really want to consider in your tabletop is, would you attempt to look for those sites and download the information? If you're being told that the ransomware group is exposing it, would you try and download it so you know exactly what is or is not exposed? Obviously, there are complications if you want to go to a ransomware website where they are probably tracking downloads and visitors and other things. So all of this is starting to happen. It's starting to put pressure on the command staff, which is the point of this particular inject. It's no longer about the simple IT mechanisms. And if you get your systems back up and running, it's about all the outside things that are suddenly bringing in a more difficult scenario. If state CJIS or the FBI finds out about this and they start calling, what are you going to say to them? Especially when you're still trying to figure out what's going on during the incident, you haven't really got into the recovery stage yet. How do you actually communicate? So most of us tend to think, well, I'm just going to pick up my phone. But do you have hard copies of telephone numbers and other resources available? Because if your email server is encrypted, you may not have your contact access. You may not be able to email anybody, but you also may not be able to get access to their phone numbers. If you have voice over IP, you may not be able to make those phone calls themselves. How do you communicate with the press? How do you communicate with anybody who's trying to get in touch and offer assistance? There's a fair chance somebody is going to be offering assistance. So we want you during this inject to be thinking about what that assistance might look like, and would you actually take up the assistance and say, if the National Guard or your state cybersecurity working group volunteers to help, would you say yes? How would you bring them in, and so on? And then the final one is really about your PIO, because I can't tell you how many times we see it. The PIO gets told, okay, you need to make a statement about the ransomware that just hit us. And that person goes, great, what's ransomware? This is not the time to be explaining ransomware. So think about who should be in the tabletop exercise, but also who should be in that outreach position, and make sure they have the resources available. So this slide, while it's fairly short, isn't all encompassing, because we're just trying to get you to outreach and think of all the other people that might be involved and how you might be getting increased pressure. I do see there's a comment in here about having a system in place to manage encryption and API keys. Yeah, you shouldn't have those stored in clear text. Please don't store those in clear text. But there's all types of situations where we have increased pressure because things aren't going well. I'm going to see the poll right now. Do you have a good working relationship with the FBI and state CJIS? Fortunately, about 3/4 of you do. That is kind of awesome. Whether you actually, okay, somebody says they don't. That could be a problem. And a couple of people are actually saying, yes, they have a great relationship, but they may wait to make sure they have a full handle on what's happening. Keep in mind that you may not have a choice. Those folks may be calling in to ask questions as well. Before I move on, just anybody want to add any other things? Rest of my co-presenters? Nope. All good. All right, then we are moving on to the next one.
Thank you, Stacy. I think we'll start with the next poll here. So once that's up, we'll read it out. How long could you function without critical cyber infrastructure, meaning your CAD, your RMS, your 911 calls? And go ahead and answer that, and then we'll start talking about the different points we're trying to make. So recovery is going to look a little bit different for everyone. This is something I've learned through being an IGIS, talking to our peers, and really talking to John. John and I come from two very different size agencies, right? So recovery can be dependent on a number of factors: the type of attack, the system that was attacked, and how widespread that is, your agency's capabilities and capacity to respond, and whether or not you've done your homework. So I just want to pause on that. There was a really good conversation in the chat, and John C. was leading it with maybe John Broussard talking about business impact and CISA and classifying your systems. I was the unfortunate victim of having a 2-year independent audit on all our systems for the police department by an independent auditor within the county. And I say that because it's painful, but it was needed. It was needed. And the auditor was very thoughtful and collaborative. So it was kind of the best case scenario. And we found that we were not classifying our systems efficiently or to any standard, because we have so many that have been around for so long that at different points in time they were classified differently. So we've got a standard now, and we start with that standard when we evaluate the procurement of that system. We have an architectural review board. So for instance, in my county, which is fairly large and well-resourced, our DIT, our Department of Information Technology, is a standalone agency within the county, and the police department has an information technology division that is kind of like a parent and child agency relationship between the two. So we are well resourced. We have a whole infosec team that could come in and really guide us on how to do this. And we have policies for all of this. But in your considerations, if this was a phishing attack or some vulnerability that was caused this, you're going to want to know specifically what controls failed, because what you don't want to happen is all of a sudden you recover, you bring everything back up and you're back down like that. I'll share that in neighbor agency in the region was a victim of a ransomware attack as we were developing this presentation. And they were without CAD or RMS for quite some time. I'm still not sure if they're back with RMS, but they're going through this recovery right now, and they're learning some lessons. And I don't say that to show off that I'm any better, because it could be me tomorrow, right? But there's some things we can all learn from each other and hopefully not make that particular mistake moving forward. So once you've identified whatever control failed, in this case, it was a ransomware and it was an admin account that got compromised, as Stacy said, during her part, that's typically how this is going to go. How do you know your network is clean and safe to begin restoration, right? For us, we would work very closely with our DIT and our InfoSec. We're self-insured, so it would be a lot of work within the county and other state and federal stakeholders to identify where we're potentially exposed. And number 3 is where it comes down to, have you done your homework? What needs to be restored first? You want to have that conversation before you're in a crisis, because once you're in a crisis, everyone's system is all of a sudden the most important, right? Whoever the stakeholder is. And it might be multiple and different stakeholders across your agency. So we need those jail files right back right now. No, we need CAD back. No RMS. And some of these things are about operational strategy, but some of it's also about IT architecture and infrastructure. Where are the dependencies in your systems, right? Does CAD feed RMS? Is CAD fed from a 911 call handling system? So there should be some sort of architecture, and as Stacy pointed out, maybe written plans that are printed out somewhere about what needs to come back up, not just from what's most important for public safety, which is clearly a priority, but also which one will work first, right? So you want to have those conversations now. It's always better to have that now. And do you have unencrypted complete backups? So I'll share that there's a conversation in the chat about it's your responsibility to protect your data and you need to encrypt data at rest. That's Anthony Davis. We all know it's a CGIS standard and best practices. In the agency that I'm talking about in the region, their data was encrypted at rest. Unfortunately, their backup applications were on the same server as their primary applications. So that one server going down, they're now going to the vendor to rebuild everything. So they're not so worried about exfiltration, but operationally they're really hampered. So that gets to license keys. Where are those stored? How are they stored? And the manpower to rebuild these systems, right? So the question directly asks, are there offline copies of the software? And having assisted an agency that recently went through this, I can't encourage that enough. I cannot encourage that enough. So I want to just turn over to somebody who's an expert in RMS security and maybe dealing with this. So Larry, I think you might have a comment or two you want to add to this, and I really would value your perspective here.
Oh, geez. Well, okay, Brendan. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I actually wanted to touch on something that you said, I don't know, maybe let's call it 2 minutes ago, which was I wrote it down. Um, you could be tomorrow. Like this could happen to you tomorrow. That is a very, very important thing. It you probably heard the term, everybody, but it's not if but when, right? It is going to happen. You are going to have a cyber incident, a sophisticated one like we're talking about today. There is a term that many of you probably have heard, but it's zero trust, and one of the tenets of zero trust is you have to assume breach. You have to assume at all times that you've been breached. And how do you lessen your access first off? So if you are breached today, if there is a nefarious actor on your network, literally right now, as we're doing this webinar, they can't pivot around much because you've locked access down well enough that you're practicing least privilege, and they really kind of can't move around too much. So that's some of the things that that you need to think about. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, and you did get to it at the end there, Brendan, is the backups side of it. Backups can really be your best friend if you have a ransomware attack, if all of a sudden they're locking up all of your files. Having those good solid backups, that can literally save the day. It literally can. Um, so as we're talking, we're going through a TTX right now with all of you, and it is a tabletop exercise. You can picture everybody in your organization, your agency, sitting around a table, and you're kind of working through these scenarios. One bit that you might want to add to this is a bit more of a technical piece to this, is to literally test your backups. Make sure that your backups are in good order. Make sure that you have a recent snapshot that isn't 6 months old. Maybe it was last week or yesterday. The other piece of that is if you have backups that maybe aren't managed by yourself, maybe they're in the cloud, definitely push your vendors to make sure that they are backing up your data. They can manage that for you. They can certainly, if it's in the cloud, it can be very automated, very seamless behind the scenes, and it can really, really save you. So those are kind of the 2 points that I wanted to bring up. Stacy, was there anything that you wanted to also highlight?
Yeah, so to the backup point, I would say keep in mind that ransomware actors know backups are going to save you, so they go after them. Before they even start encrypting the data on your network, they've probably already found your Active Directory and your backups and worked on encrypting those, which kind of ties into the thing that I find so critical on this. How do you know when your network is clean and you can start restoration? I have seen in work cases where an agency was compromised that spread to multiple other agencies within the same state. And they managed to actually get the ransomware actors out. They thought they started recovery, and the actors came back, left a note that was perhaps less than polite the second time through, saying, "You tried, you failed, and now we're going to make it worse," because instead of paying, they were trying to clean their network. And so that second time through, happening just a week later, actually everything got destroyed. They started going in and wiping files and so on. So it's really worth making sure that you have those backups. They're offline, off-site as well, but also tested, like Larry said, to know they're safe. And then to make sure that you know how to bring up that network in a safe manner so that the actors can't get back in, because they will do that. They know, and they tend to get pissed off. I've seen them get upset like this. The other thing I think it's really important on this slide is things like offline copies of the software, because if you're waiting on somebody to get you new copies and to dig your license keys out of the sales purchase you made years ago, that is going to be really challenging. You may be waiting days just to get those license keys so you can redo the installs.
I think
John,
those are.
sorry,
ahead,
John
Lauren.
points out a really great link I'm going to highlight too in the about from CISA, the planning, response, and recovery, which I think may be on a couple slides, but we'll get there.
So I'll say this isn't in the slide, but it's just a good strategy, and this is sort of what played out with the town. We're like, how do we prevent this from happening again, right? So really, never let a good crisis go to waste. Multi-factor authentication, the amount of complaining that I hear about that from my end users, and I wish I had a poll to see how many agencies hear complaining from their end users about multi-factor authentication, is a really good intervention to prevent some of this. And, you know, I can use these examples from neighboring agencies and go, do you want to be like them? Or are you going to be okay if it takes you 30 seconds longer to log in somewhere? It can also help with funding and developing some of those backups, because that can cost money. So in this neighboring agency, one of the leaders was saying, you know, we're trying to get this alternative server, a backup server, and, you know, some people were saying maybe it was cost prohibitive. And now that cost has become clarified, that maybe an ounce of prevention is a little better than crisis. So you can use this strategically to help drive change. I hope that you never have to deal with this. I really do. But if you do, make sure that you communicate effectively strategies to prevent it moving forward, which are both process changes, technology changes, and probably some budgetary changes. So then we're going to move on to the next slide here and talk a little bit more about long-term recovery. So we should have a poll coming out here in a moment. On the last poll, most of you, well, we'll move on to the new poll here. What percentage of your staff can operate in analog mode? So I remember being a rookie here, and I see some familiar names in here, maybe from Loudoun County, that have been around for a minute or two. I remember using paper map books. They were integrated with the CAD system, so you'd get a coordinate, and that would be where you'd look in the map book on the right page. Remember paper code books, and we handwrote reports. I could probably piece that together pretty quickly. We don't teach some of this anymore because we don't issue map books. We don't issue paper code books. So what is our backup plan? You know, and what is the skills and capability of our end users to move off of technology? Have they become over reliant on it? And I don't know if over reliant is how I would describe it, but have we really made them flexible enough so that they can both leverage technology and use it efficiently, but be able to respond if they're not? Our Department of Public Safety and Communications, they do an offline mode once a month. I don't think the dispatchers or the cops love it, but it's good practice to be able to be dispatched without having the CAD do it for you. Reference the old poll, 50% of respondents said it depends on the system for how long their officers could last, and another 28% they could function for less than 24 hours without critical systems. So if it's less than 24 hours, you might need to really get on it. This is also when you're going to want to start talking about doing a debrief, lessons learned, bringing in experts and consultants to talk about strategies moving forward, really leveraging that crisis to get positive change. Look at your current frameworks, and I'm going to let maybe some of my team talk about defense in depth, but it really comes back down to that backups and routine, that testing in the backups. The phishing training, you know, it's mandatory training. I think most places it's online. To be honest, it's not very good, but there are also phishing drills where they try to catch people proactively, and we get a list of all the people that fall for it. I certainly like to make fun of my friends a little bit for the ones that end up on the list, but then they have to go through a mandatory remedial training after that. that is when we've suffered an attack, it has been every single time email phishing compromise, every single time. Now, I learned a stat from the last time I did this with Larry about the nature of attacks, how it's gone from maybe not so much phishing anymore to maybe more technical attacks. I found that very interesting. So I'll let him share that. But right now, what the poll is indicating is 100%. So 6% of the people said 100% of your staff could handle pen and paper, but the majority of it, 50% of you are saying 25% or less of your staff could go back to pen and paper. And that I would agree with that. For my agency, we're very young right now. We've had a lot of attrition. I don't know how many people are still around. And even if I wanted to support analog mode, spinning up all the contracts and work that would need to be done to distribute that information would take some time. We're not going to snap our fingers and have map books out there like that. So, but Larry, do you remember what you mentioned at the IACP Tech conference about how this is the first time? If you wanted to touch on that, because I found that very interesting.
Yeah. So it was actually taken out of the Verizon breach report. Verizon breach report is a very popular report that comes out every year. I mean, it's one of the biggest internet service providers in the world, right? So they have a lot of fidelity into what's going on the internet. And I believe the stat was that this is the first time since they've been tracking these that phishing is no longer the number one attack vector. Thank you, John. It looks like you put the link right in there. It is actually, I believe, vulnerabilities now. Just vulnerabilities is number one, and it's very close. I wouldn't doubt it, especially with AI and how good AI is getting with actual phishing attacks. That maybe phishing takes it back next year. But yes, those are 1 and 2, and they're very close. To Brendan's point around the training, some of this training software is free, and if it's not free, it is pretty affordable compared to some of the other cybersecurity technologies that maybe you do have to purchase. It is a huge bang for your buck. Training your people in phishing training more regularly than the once a year cadence. So I strongly suggest that. The other thing that you mentioned, Brendan, that I wanted to call out, and this is more just to help people if maybe they're struggling with this, is you did talk about maybe bringing in external parties to help you with this, and some of these external parties are free. Like we mentioned a few of them. The FBI, certainly, if you're having an issue, you can call them, bring them in. They're going to help you out. CISA also has some services. But even in your tabletop exercises, if you want some help guiding it, your cyber insurance companies will actually get involved and do tabletop exercises with you as well. So that's another one to look into. Yeah, I think those are the points I wanted to make. Stacy, John, do you have any other points you wanted to make around this? No? Okay.
All right.
All right.
So, we hope that, going through this exercise is help giving you some ideas of how to actually conduct one of these. We realized a little different in the webinar format. However, it's vital that when we look at the audience that was here, for me as a decision maker within a law enforcement agency, I see that we have, I believe it was overwhelmingly IT staff here. And the importance of a tabletop exercise is that we are bringing the experts. We are bringing the IT folks in to tell people like myself what we need to know. And really, as you prepare yourself to conduct one of these tabletop exercises, you may find, be critical of your agency, be critical of your own backups, be critical of the own testing you have done against your systems. Be honest with yourself. This is a point for self-evaluation. And as you design this, bring in other people, bring in your training division. They're going to have a whole different insight into how this works. bring in your anybody who deals with stuff within your, your vehicle maintenance even. You need to bring in a bunch of different levels throughout your agency to determine what you're missing. Your role in running the tabletop exercise is not to convince yourself, it's to convince the other roles that are not normally thinking of this. That will probably be your CEO or your chief executive officer, your line level commanders. They're the ones that are speaking to their officers, your training division, and really importantly, the finance people, the people who pay for this. They are being screamed at by training, equipment, just whatever different division. We need new cars. We need this different uniform. We need more ammunition. They see you saying we need more computers, new computers. All of this costs time and money. They need to understand the savings up front by discovering this sooner than later and why it's important. The CEO needs to understand how this is going to impact their life, and the politicians need to understand how this is going to impact everything if it goes wrong, so that they give you the tools that you need, that you don't just get lost in that ask. Keep in mind that, even when you're discussing this, and you've seen even now with like the Axon body cameras where they have multi-factor built into the camera. Reason being, something you may not consider issues and contract issues when you're bringing in future securities such as tokens or MFA applications on phones or different devices. It's important to get these voices in the room. Your job in running one of these tabletop exercises is to try to bring that in, get that prepared, and show the different people at that table why their role is important or why the decision they have to make is important in guaranteeing the success of this to prevent what we've seen in other locations. Does any of my other co-hosts have anything else to interject?
John, I wanted to hit home again on the point you're making around bringing people to the seat of the table so they understand the importance of this. Again, I said it at the beginning. I've been a cybersecurity professional for 25 plus years. I know the majority of people on the phone are kind of IT and cyber people. I understand how difficult it is to fight for budget. I get it. I've lived it. And what John is saying really, really rings home. This can really help you acquire budget for the next budget cycle. The other thing it can really help you do is map out what your roadmap is going to be. So you're going to do these tabletop exercises and you are going to find deficiencies. You're going to find gaps. And some of these gaps you'll be able to fix next week. Other ones you're not going to be able to fix until next year. So this all of a sudden is going to help you create a roadmap that you can then share with your superior and say, all right, these are the gaps we have. I think we should work on these over the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 18 months. And therefore, I'm going to need budget here, here, and here. So it's also, it's kind of a twofold. You're going to get a lot out of these exercises, is kind of what I wanted to add there, John.
Yeah, and it's also a shield for you. Let's face it, that unfortunately, I think as Larry or Brendan said, it's not if, it's when. And by conducting these exercises and doing good documentation and discussion, God forbid when something does happen to you, you can say, I did try to work on this. We did take these steps. We didn't get there in time, but we weren't blindsided. We had an idea, and because I had that idea, I did these other things. It could have been worse. Again, use this as a total approach, a 360 within your agency.
All right, we're coming home to the end, everybody. This is when I kind of teased some of the ending slides that you wanted to stick around for. So the first one is tools. So you can see them on the screen here. I mean, I know some of you probably can't click on these links, but we tried to at least give you the name. But there are a lot of great things, and some of them were even shared in the chat, right? Certainly the NIST framework. We've done a lot of content at IGES around NIST and how you should be thinking about adopting that. But there's even sites on here where if you do know the ransomware that, or the piece of malware, the type of malware that is on your network, you can go to some of these sites and they'll give you tools on how to decrypt the ransomware. So there's some great sites on here, some great tools on here. So I would just say, like, if you can't click, certainly take a photo of the screen, and we can even talk to just about sharing these around. You can see at the bottom here, even FEMA and CISA, they have certain like tools around doing your own TTX. Like they will guide you step by step through how to do these. And there's even a couple even above there. So a lot of great information. Stacy, I think you have some no-brainers and wins. So go for it.
Yep. And I'll go back to the tools slide in just a moment, but if you don't know, for those of you out there, sometimes if you take a screenshot of it, you can then copy and paste the text now. It actually allows you to read the text. Quick wins. Obviously, I think most of us know these, but turn on auto updates, use virus protection. We may not see very many viruses anymore, but it's still worth it. Some of these protections you probably already got on. I know I saw somebody mention the CIS controls earlier, former CIS employee. I'm a huge fan of the controls, but with IGES, we've done a lot of work with the NIST cybersecurity framework. All of these are the basics. And then no-brainers. We talked about a lot of these, like multi-factor authentication. I know just the other day, someone got my password from a compromise and they called me trying to get me to give them the MFA code. And the only reason my account wasn't compromised was because I had MFA enabled. So do as much as you can in terms of quick wins and these no-brainers. Hopefully most of them turn on pretty quickly, even if you don't have a complex environment. And you can do what you can to try and stop everything. I know we will do our best to get everything out to you, but I want to make sure that you have our contact information so you can always reach out to us. And again, you can screenshot it, but you can email us and we will try and help you as we can. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, that's it, everybody. We are right up against the hour. So hopefully you found. I just want to thank everybody who joined the webinar. I want to thank everybody who participated in the polls. I think it was very engaging from that perspective. I also want to thank everybody for chiming in on the chat as well. This was great. You know, we always have the fear that it's not going to be interactive. So I just want to thank everybody for really kind of coming along this journey with us. Again, as Stacy said, please reach out. Please reach out to any of us. We're more than happy to help you. I mean, it's what we do at IGES, and it's what we do as just people as well. We're always here to help. So, anything anybody else wants to say? Or are we good? Everybody good? Our panelists?
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. A lot of familiar faces.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.